Welcome to the VBAC Homebirth Stories podcast, where we celebrate and share powerful VBAC homebirth stories to inspire and support mamas just like you. I'm your host, Ashley Winning, a VBAC homebirth advocate and mama of 3, and I believe every woman deserves to birth with confidence and trust in her body. In each episode, you'll hear real-life stories, expert insight, and encouragement to help you feel informed and empowered on your VBAC homebirth journey. Let's dive in. Hey, and welcome to another podcast episode. I'm your host, Ashley, and today I'm going to share what I learned from listening to hundreds of birth stories over the years. I've listened to birth stories for a long time now. I would say probably going on, thinking about it, probably 9 to 10 years listening to birth stories. VBAC stories, home birth stories, hospital birth stories, births that went according to plan, births that didn't. I think I probably listened to a lot of births that didn't go to a plan, and then maybe births that went to plan. There, I found that, there's some themes that I've noticed over and over again, and I think that there's something to learn when I listen to nearly every woman's birth. Like, even when I interview women on the podcast, I'm interviewing women who are having VBAC home births, but every experience is so unique and so different. I've been doing this for 6 years now, the podcast, and it's still, every single time I hear women, I still cry. I still have tears, and I still feel excitement and joy, and it's a wonderful, healing and beautiful experience for me. So basically, there's always something new and something juicy and a gold nugget somewhere. Now, some of the things that I'm going to share with you today, you may have heard me talk about multiple times, but they are things that are important, so I will share them again. So birth doesn't always follow the textbook, and that's definitely something that I've seen. Birth unfolds the way that birth needs to go. Labour doesn't always start slowly. Contractions don't always come progressively stronger in neat little patterns. Sometimes they don't have a pattern, and we shouldn't be looking for patterns. We do give guides as birth workers of potential patterns because people like to feel in control. People like to have a guide and have something to turn to. But birth doesn't always happen like that. It didn't happen for me like that. And I suppose when I surrendered to the experience and I just allowed it to flow the way it needed to, and having a home birth, I didn't need to worry about contraction timers and things like that. I already had the idea of instinctive birth. It's going to unfold how it goes. Some women will go talking normally to having a baby very quickly. Some women will have very intense births to having a baby quickly. Some women will have intense births and the labour will slow down and calm down and it won't be as intense. Some women will have calm births and, it'll get intense as it goes along. Physiological birth often looks far more varied than we're taught. And I really wish this was something that people would understand a little bit more and also embody. Women know more than they're given credit for. So women are often treated, I feel like women are often treated, unless they're experienced birthers, they've had a couple of vaginal births, they're often treated as if they don't know what's happening inside their body. And this happened recently with a client of mine where she was in preterm. Her waters ruptured at 28 weeks and she had on and off stuff happening, cramping and more fluids coming out, and there were lots of things that they were looking at, and she was told every day, I'll be surprised if you'll still have this baby inside you by the weekend, by 2 days time. And then 2 days time would come, and then should be sent home, and then should come back, and then 2 days time they'd say the same thing, and it was like nobody really knows what's going to happen. This is what happens most of the time, but sometimes you're the person that ends up being the one that, ends up in the smaller category of the thing happening. Sometimes you become the 1% essentially, rather than the 90% of people. So women can sense when labour is happening, and they can sense that before anyone else believes them. So this woman who I was supporting, this beautiful mum, she basically was messaging me and letting me know what was happening, and we'd had stop, start. Obviously things were happening, but She wasn't in a birth suite, but she'd been admitted in the hospital for the last couple of days. And I called her on the phone and I said, hey, what's going on? And she said, I've been doing this thing. And I said to her, oh, it really sounds like something's happening here. I said, I want you to really believe that this is real, because even if they don't believe it, I want you to believe it. Even if this isn't labour, I want you to know that something's happening, and if you need support, then you need to get support. And so even if it wasn't labour and it was going to happen in a couple of days' time, she's still going through this experience, right, where she needed support and she needs to be heard immediately. And so she needed to be supported and she needed to be trusted. And so their advice was, just have a Panadol or have this thing and jump back into bed and deal with the pain. And there was nobody there. Her partner wasn't there. She wasn't in a birth suite. She wasn't being treated as if she was in labour. And I said to her, I think I'm just going to come to the hospital and come and support you. And she's like, okay, yeah, okay. And then I literally got myself ready and I started driving up to the hospital. I had my kids in the car. My husband was coming down to grab the kids at the hospital. And she messaged me maybe half an hour later and said, baby's born. And it was like, this poor woman had been doing this thing for a few hours, but she didn't even realise she was in labour. She knew she was in labour, but she said that she gaslighted herself out of it because everyone around her was basically saying that this is not it, that nothing's happened, and have a Panadol and get back into bed. So she knew that something was happening, but she wasn't being supported in an environment. It was only when she dropped to her knees by the bed and a midwife came in and they said, oh, we better get you into the birth suite. And then 10 minutes later, she gave birth to her baby. And, it concerns me that we've got people who are experienced, but they're not noticing these sorts of things. And so after the experience, she said to me, the number one thing, like I was worried and scared because I was by myself, but what got me through it was you believing in me and you trusting in me and telling me that this is real. And, to her, that validated her experience. And so I think sometimes, and I recently just heard it in Mel's story, classical scar story, she said, I was gaslighting myself out of it because the pattern wasn't the way that the textbook pattern. So I wasn't believing I was in labour because it wasn't fitting this idea of a textbook birth. And so she knew something was happening, but she wasn't allowing, her physical mind was overriding her intuitive knowing. And I suppose if you're not an intuitive person, and we're all intuitive, but if you're an intellectual processor and you're the kind of person that overrides your intuitive thoughts, you'll know straight away if you're one of those people. I'm one of those people. I have really great intuition, but I often let other people's opinions or even my own mind convince me of something different until my intuition is so strong that it just like says something inside me like, no, this is wrong. And so she was like, I was in labour. I was just telling my husband to go back to sleep. Like, I'll call you if I need you. But she was in proper labour, but she was convincing herself that she wasn't. So women know, even if we can't put voices or words or say what's happening because we've never had the experience before, we just know what's happening. Just the same as like when my baby, so I'm going through this labour, nobody knows what's happening with my body. Even my doula, who'd been at a lot of births afterwards, said to me, you were either going to give birth soon or you had like days to go, because I couldn't tell what was going on. And birth's a bit like that, You don't really know what's going on, especially if things aren't progressing in this textbook way. And it was, I have no idea. This is the first time I'm giving birth vaginally, right? Having a free birth, I've got no vaginal, like fingers up my vagina, checking anything. But all of a sudden, I just felt this huge head coming down. Well, I didn't feel like it was a head. I felt like it was a big poo, the size of a head. I think I said it was like a basketball. It was just this huge thing coming down. I could feel it down my back, down my bum, like in that area. And then all of a sudden I could feel something in my vagina, like in the canal. And I was just like, there's something there. And like, of course, on reflection and looking back, of course it was a baby's head. But like, I couldn't put words to it. I couldn't be certain because I'd never had that experience again before. Now, if I went and had another baby again, obviously I've got that lived experience. I can go, oh, the baby's head's just come down and it's there. Now I know because I've got the experience. But women know things, but we can't put words to it. It's like, I'll give you another experience because I just love giving experiences. I love giving lived experiences. I was in the hospital with my second baby and I knew that I was poorly. I'd lost 3 litres of blood. I'd had transplants, blood transfusions, not transplants. I'd had blood transfusions and I was telling every single midwife that was seeing me. So every time they did a shift handover, I think in a 24-hour period, I said, I'm not being funny, but I actually don't feel well and I don't think I should go home on the day that you guys want to send me home. And I'm like, I've had a C-section before. I just don't feel right. And, they're like, oh, well, tell us what's wrong. And it's like, I can't actually tell you what's wrong because I'm not a medical professional and I've never actually gone through this experience before. But all I could say was, I just don't feel good. And none of them listened to me. None of them got a doctor in to, they just brush me off. And when you don't listen to women, you're not actually helping them because you're not listening to them. You're not actually trying to solve a problem. You're just saying, oh, well, if you don't know what it is, well, I'm not going to do my job and actually try to help you. I'm just going to bypass what you're saying to me. So a couple of days later, I went home and I went to the doctor the next day and she looked at me, who's been my doctor for years, and she's like, oh my goodness, Ashley, you look sick. I've never seen you look this way before. I could barely breathe. And she sent me straight to the emergency and, I ended up having another blood transfusion because I could barely breathe. My iron levels and everything weren't high enough and I just wasn't coping. I knew that, but I couldn't articulate it into words. And so women know things. We know when we need our privacy. We know when we need support. And we just describe things as just knowing. And that's, for me, when I hear women's stories, a lot of the time they know, I knew I needed to get to the hospital. I knew I needed to have this thing. I just knew something wasn't right. Sometimes when we look at our babies and we just know something isn't right, but we can't articulate exactly, we can't give it a word because we're not experiencing that thing. Now, when I had my third baby, I lost a similar amount of blood and I was able to articulate it to them. I said, look, I've been through this before. I know what it's like because now I'm an expert. I've lost a large amount of blood twice. So I actually know what it feels like this time. So I said, look, I'll tell you what it is. I've just lost a lot of blood and my body needs either more iron or another blood transfusion. I've been through this before. And instead of listening to me, they decided to do 10 or maybe 6 tests, checked out my heart, checked out my brain, checked my body for clots. And the very last test that they checked was the iron, and that was the day after. And then they went, oh, yeah, you're right, your iron's really low. We'll give you a transfusion. And it's listen to what women are telling you because we actually know stuff sometimes. Sometimes we can articulate it, sometimes we can't. Before we continue with this episode, I wanted to take a moment to share something for those of you navigating your own VBAC journey. One of the things I hear from women time and time again is how lonely planning a VBAC can be. Maybe you're the only person in your family considering a VBAC. Maybe your friends don't quite understand. Maybe you're leaving appointments with more questions than answers. Or you just have that feeling that you just feel like this isn't right. This isn't how it's supposed to feel. That's exactly why I created the VBAC Village. The VBAC Village is a supportive community of women planning a VBAC who want evidence-based information, connection, encouragement, and a space where they don't have to explain why this journey matters to them. If you're looking for support from women who truly get it, I'd love to welcome you inside. You can learn more at ashleywinning.com/VBAC Village. Now let's get back to today's episode. The birth environment matters. So birthing in a space where you feel when you're not being watched, what comes up often is women describe feeling watched, feeling interrupted, feeling unable to relax, feeling safer in one environment versus another. So if you're in a space where you feel super safe, that makes all the difference to birthing in a space where you're not allowed access to a birth pool, or you're not allowed to do this, or you're not allowed to do that. I mean, that's not nice, is it? It doesn't feel good. Continuity of care is a huge factor as well. So listening to women share their stories about their midwife who they have built this relationship with throughout the pregnancy. They feel safe and comfortable, and they can rely on to ask questions to really get the information in a way that's not feeling pressured or forced. I just, that completely changed everything. Feeling known, seen, understood, and not having to explain themselves repeatedly, I think just makes it so much easier as well. Language matters as well. Things women remember years later on, when women are told your body can't do this, your pelvis is too small, your baby won't fit, you're failing to progress. Those things stick in women's mind for a long time, and then they're trying to unpack that for the next birth. And a lot of women who have had a C-section and they're going for a VBAC the next time, they are often told these things. It's quite, well, I mean, obviously I'm working with a certain type of a woman who's coming to me. Usually they want to have a physiological birth. They've done a lot of research anyways. So they're probably a lot more aware of the language that's been told to them, and they really want to understand whether the information they've been told is true, because they are often told it with such confidence that it is truth, that it's interesting when they find out that, actually there's no way that they can ascertain whether your pelvis is too small, because you really need to have an x-ray. And most of the time the x-rays are not done. It's usually just a throwaway comment that happens during the C-section. Oh, your pelvis was too small, that's why you couldn't have your baby vaginally. And then that woman who had a pelvis that was too small went on to have a vaginal birth with a big baby next time. So obviously comments are made to women in a way that can be very detrimental for the next birth. Having support matters more than we realize. So women often describe having a supportive partner. When women feel that their partner is with them, even if they don't truly understand why the woman's making that choice, but they're just showing up for the woman anyways. But I've worked with women who, have a supportive partner, and it really does make all the difference. So when a woman's wavering in their partner, like I've worked with this amazing woman twice now, Sarah. She's been on the podcast and shared her stories with us twice. She shared she went through this hardship with high blood pressure, and then she went to the hospital. She was planning a home birth, and they said that she had preeclampsia. And I remember speaking to her when she was in the hospital, and she was really, really worried because they were really putting it to her, saying, we really want you to have a hospital birth. And her midwife was like, oh, I recommend you have a hospital birth. But her husband was just like rolling his eyes and just like, whatever, we've been through this so many times now. I just, like, it's all a load of old shit. Like, basically that's what he was like. And the difference with having someone who's supportive makes all the difference. So having a supportive partner, having a trusted midwife, having a, amazing doula by your side, or a friend who believed in you. I know for me, I had women in the home birth community when I was planning my free birth all over the world. I was in lots of different online spaces and connected with women who were pregnant before me, who went on to have their VBAC home births, or women who were having free births. I met up with women in person at home birth circles here in Queensland. And there was a woman who had her free birth before, and we became fast and quick friends, and just hearing their stories, and also like being able to have conversations and not feel like I was a weirdo because I couldn't talk to any of my friends at the time about it, because they really didn't understand it. And, it made all the difference for me. And I know that when women are supported by anyone, any one of those people, it really makes all the difference for them. So Same as when women are not supported, those women are usually then not having their home birth. They're not having the birth that they want to, because they're usually conceding to whatever it is that the partner wants or whatever the family member's telling them that they should have. And so, it really makes a huge difference. Birth is not just physical. So, one thing that really stands out for me is how emotional birth is. Women often remember how they felt. I still remember how I felt from my births, years ago. Almost, we're coming up to 12 years at the end of the year for my first birth. I don't think I'll ever forget. I still get teary when I think about it or I share. I recorded something for my YouTube the other day about my birth story, and I was like, wow, I'm still emotional about how I felt during that experience. And while I don't lose sleep over it or I'm not like upset about it, it still is something that is in my heart. How they were treated, they remember how they were treated. I definitely remember every person who was kind and every person who was not kind, whether they felt safe, whether they felt respected. Years later, many women remember very little about the cervical dilation, but they remember exactly how people made them feel. There are many ways to have a positive birth. So there is not just one way. Positive birth doesn't always mean home birth, VBAC, unmedicated birth, water birth. Women describe positive births when they feel informed, respected, supported, included in decision making. So if the birth deviates and other things happen, like my birth deviated and, I had to deal with all different things that I was hoping would happen, but you can't control that. So all you can control is what you say yes to and what you say no to. And for me, there was so much power in advocating for myself when I did transfer into the hospital and ask for things that I wanted, because that was great. It was such a great experience for me to be put under in GA. Like, I did not want to be awake for being part of that after my last birth before that. So there's so much power in being able to use your voice and ask for things. Birth can be incredibly healing, and many women describe healing after trauma, healing after previous caesareans, healing after difficult births. Not because a particular birth fixes everything, but because they experience something different, something powerful, something that helped them reconnect to themselves. Oh my goodness, I am getting so emotional just thinking about this, because birth can be so healing. I felt so whole when I had my VBAC home birth. Like, I cannot explain to you how whole I felt. I don't think you need to have a birth to heal from things. I don't want to get into the mode of, selling women that you will be healed and everything will everything will disappear and all your life will become a miracle afterwards. But for me, it was so transformative in the sense that I felt I'd come back to myself. I felt that I'd reclaimed something that was taken from me. Maybe I'd proved something to myself because, I was told it would be hard for me. I couldn't do it, la, 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 la. It seems really silly that like giving birth vaginally can have that experience. But the reason why it had that experience for me and for many women who have VBACs is because we're told we can't. Because we're told that it's no big deal, or, we're not believed, trusted and supported. And so when it happens, it's like this experience that you just can't buy. It's not an experience you can buy. It's just something you've got to go through. And I often reflect because, my mum had, me in 8 hours. It was just a vaginal birth. And my mother-in-law, the same, she had vaginal births. And birth wasn't transformative to them in the sense, but then they didn't have the hardship of the births that I had beforehand. And so when I'm feeling down about the fact that I had C-sections, or I think about it and think, oh God, I would have made a different decision if I could go back. Sometimes, in a microsecond thought, I think about that. I always come back to, but the reason why you're so passionate and the reason why you're here doing this thing is because you believe, you've had this transformative experience, like your whole, like everything, my last birth was 5.5 years ago now. And I honestly couldn't wait to give birth again. Like I'm a little bit frightened about birth still. I think maybe it's a good idea to have a little bit of fear. Like I think, just because there's fear doesn't mean you shouldn't do something. Almost the fear almost makes it like, well, this is alive. This is a feeling of being alive. But also, fear's a normal thing to experience as well. But I don't know, there's something powerful about birth and the rawness of it all. And it really humbles you, I think. But also when I look at my daughter, my youngest daughter, I think we did that together. Like that was our experience, and she had her experience and I had my experience. And like, I'm really grateful I was able to give her that experience as well. Anyway, I won't go into that too much, but I'm just fully, when I'm explaining this to you guys, I'm just really talking from my heart. Like, of my experiences, this is just a human experience, isn't it? The human body is remarkable. We have heard stories of breech births, VBACs after 2 caesareans. We've had VBAC after 7 caesareans. Women who have had extremely big babies, 5.7 kilos, 5.2 kilos, 4.5 kilos. That was my baby's size. I've got a friend who had a 5-kilo baby. All vaginal births. We've got long labours, fast labours, home birth transfers, unexpected things popping up. Birth constantly reminds me that the human body is capable of extraordinary things, and just witnessing women just in their glory. Every woman's walking through this path and they come through it and it's just this thing that they go through, isn't it? But everyone has their own journey. Women are so much more powerful than they're told. Honestly, what I've learned after listening to hundreds of birth stories is that women are often stronger, wiser, and more capable than they've been led to believe. Not because birth's easy. I'll never say it is, although there are aspects of my experience that were pleasurable, comfortable, and I would say easy. Not because everything always goes to plan. I think I'm a true example of things not going to plan. Definitely not the perfect birthing experiences over here. But because again and again, I've witnessed women navigating incredible, complex situations with courage, intuition, and so much resilience. So perhaps the biggest thing I've learned is that birth isn't something that simply happens to women. Women are active participants in their birth, and their experiences deserve to be heard. So I'd love you to think, what's something your own birth has taught you, or births? I hope that you enjoyed this episode, guys. If you have any questions or you would like to request a topic to be discussed, come and slide into my DMs. I'm always here. Happy to chat, happy to connect. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. If today's episode resonated with you and you're planning a VBAC of your own, I'd love to invite you to take the next step. You can download my free VBAC starter kit designed to help you better understand your options and feel more informed as you prepare for your birth after caesarean. You'll find it at ashleywinning.com/VBAC-starter-kit. And if you're looking for ongoing support, community and connection, come and join us inside the VBAC village. You don't have to navigate this journey alone. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for tuning in to the VBAC Homebirth Stories podcast. I hope today's story inspired you to trust your body, own your choices, and embrace the power of birth. If you love this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with another mama who needs to hear this. Do you have a VBAC homebirth story to share? I'd love to hear from you. Connect with me on ashleywinning.com or on Insta at ashleylwinning. Until next time, take care and trust your body.